I'm really fortunate to have Deanne co-present with me on a landfill project that she carried out in a previous role, and I'd also like to acknowledge her current employers for allowing her to come down today. So supporting New South Wales local councils consolidate and improve regional landfills. Our presentation is divided into 4 parts: understanding the issues facing councils in regional and rural New South Wales, how the EPA is supporting regional and rural councils, the change that councils have achieved through our support, and obviously our case study. Understanding the issues. So regional and rural landfills are an important community service, and they provide waste management solutions for local residents. But they have a vast array of challenges facing them operationally and environmentally. And I don't want to stand here, as an officer working in the Parramatta office and tell you what those challenges are, because if you're from the regional area, you would know more than me about them. But we have found through our research that some local landfills are well managed, they have ongoing council management and support, they have supervision through set operating hours and regular cover, but some landfills are open continuously to the community with zero supervision, no operation controls, no cover. The vast majority are unlicensed and they fall under the licensing threshold. Our data officer provided some figures that around 50% of unlicensed landfills received under 100 tonnes per year, and a further 25% received between 100 and 500 tonnes per year. So you can see that the size of them is extremely small. The challenges facing regional landfills are also exacerbated by the tyranny of distance and transport costs. Waste services need to be available to local residents, but as this map shows, the distance between some of these sites make contractor or council collections completely uneconomic and unviable. In 2013, the Armidale office of the New South Wales EPA carried out landfill audits. They even sent Sydney operators out to Armidale to carry out these audits. In the findings, they identified 4 key areas for consideration: covering the waste, site security, access control and supervision, with control of the materials at a landfill, and possible rationalisation and closure with consideration of community impacts. The identified issues through the audit and also through other conversations with regional operations officers are often interrelated and may cover multiple sites. They do need to be considered in council strategic plans. Significant risks to the community health and environment are related to the wide-scale and uncontrolled dumping of waste and above-ground landfilling. There's asbestos contamination and other hazardous wastes, including oils and pesticides, at sites that lack adequate pollution controls. The lack of control at most unmanned landfills is causing localised environmentally harm and potentially creating a significant financial liability for small councils. And then there's also the issues specific to every landfill: leachate outbreaks, stormwater and groundwater contamination, and minimal or no landfill gas monitoring. Council face significant liability costs, and there have been cases where asbestos contaminated organics was mulched and made available to local residents. And another case of a poorly maintained fire break caused uncontrolled fires across hectares of agricultural land, resulting in court findings to a local council. So we've got some images here, just some examples of what some of the uncontrolled landfills look like. And it's hard to consider where to start in some of the clean-up options. There's zero cover, there's a large uncontrolled tipping face, there's limited controls in place for the acceptance of waste. And these poor management may have been present for extended periods over many years. The landfills create localised environmental impacts on neighbouring properties as well. In the past, management has included burning of material to allow for additional airspace and remove stockpile organics, which is now obviously illegal under POEO. And that top image, I have a pointer which I'll try and use. Oh, there, that top image. Obviously, someone's come along and burnt the mattresses for then the medical collector to come and collect the metals from inside the mattresses. These issues are especially hard to manage when the sites are located in remote areas with irregular council visits, but they continue to be utilised and used by the community. So we have metal waste here, which is obviously an amazing resource, and someone's done a great job of collecting all the metals. But how often can a contractor get out there to collect it? Probably once every 6 to 12 months. And again, the slide here is highly likely to be contaminated, possibly with asbestos, so we can't mulch that, but what's a council to do with a stockpile material? And there's probably limited end markets for the material as well. So to support councils, the EPA in 2014 announced the Landfill Consolidation and Environmental Improvement Grants as a program under the Waste Less Recycle More initiative. Round 1 and 2 opened in 2014, and in 2017 the grants were extended. In developing the grants, consultation was carried out with regional operations officers and local councils, and we really appreciate the direction and feedback given. The program design considered the issues affecting local communities and it designed a grant that would be beneficial to local regional councils and tailored to their needs. In their applications, councils were required to assess potential liabilities using an online free risk assessment and identify their own high priority sites. We made sure that we were not telling the councils what their high priority sites were. We allowed the councils to tell us what their sites were. And the application form requires identifying priority sites for eligible and ineligible items, and we covered those. So it wasn't normal operational requirements, it was things that would improve the ongoing management of the landfill. So the grants support council-driven solutions and deliver safer, cleaner landfills to the community, and it also supports alternatives through the establishment of transfer stations. The grants are results orientated. It's really an outcomes based approach for the local councils. So achieving change. Councils have closed 31 and improved 63 landfills over 2 grants programs. We are waiting for the 3rd grants program to be announced. I was hoping the Minister might announce that yesterday. We could have all celebrated, but it should be out, they should be announced any day now. And landfill closure included part or full closure, and in some cases establishment of a transfer station. Improvements included, sorry, I've gone forward too much. Improvements included security fencing and litter fencing, signage, site officers, and it leads to controlled access, supervision and tighter controls of materials landfilled. So this is the spread of the closed landfills. The darker dots obviously indicate that there were multiple landfills that closed under that council. And that's the environmental improvements. So the spread across the state obviously indicates the need and the support from councils for this project. And I've just got some examples here. Gilgandra Shire Council was successful in receiving funding for the closure of Armatree Landfill in 2000 and Turaween Landfill, under the same grant in 2014. Lindsay is actually here at the conference, so Lindsay would be happy to talk to anyone, I'm sure, if they can find him. In 2017, the community applied for some additional funding through Net Waste Regional Waste Group to establish a waste and recycling transfer for the local residents. So success was through a combination of direct grant funding, local funding through the waste group, but really it was driven by the council. Bourke Shire Council was successful in applying for funding of 6 sites under one application. It was all about fencing, fencing, fencing. They just really needed to fence the landfill off. It doubled up as litter fencing for them, and the signage provided additional education opportunities for the council. And Greater Hume Shire Council was successful in funding for Henty Landfill. The landfill was located on the edge of a Ramsar significant wetland, Doodlecuma Swamp. The waste mass was regularly underwater and inaccessible along the road. The council closed the landfill and established a transfer station. Thank you. Thanks. I can have a drink now.
Okay, so as Danielle and Elissa said, I was formerly at Tenterfield Council, so we I'll be pretty brief because I think we might be running a bit short, are we? Right, okay. Large area, not too many people, even less ratepayers, lots of national parks, so lots of non-rateable land, lots of distance between different townships and villages. We had the main town's Tenterfield, but then 5 or 6 little rural villages. Torrington, Liston, Legume and Dalman were all unmanned, completely unsupervised. There was just most cases just a trench, open trench, not much else. Urbanville was manned, but it was rapidly running out of capacity. There was really no room left to go any further, and it was being keenly watched by the EPA, far too keenly. This is the way that we started at Tenterfield anyway. In 2013 we developed the waste management strategy, and that identified the need to address the rural and village landfills and remove just the uncontrolled access. That was the biggest thing. Funding, like everyone here who's in a rural village or a rural council, is extremely difficult. We had, the year I started was the first year we introduced a waste levy on the rates. So prior to that, everything had been coming out of the general fund, and anyone who knows any of the roads engineers, they don't like to share either. So this is what we had, and I imagine it's what most of you have as well. We had constantly had gates left open, fences cut, new access tracks. We had lots of dumping from out of the area, just dumping absolutely anywhere and everywhere on the site. We had concern for the safety. There was often fires. Anecdotally, apparently one of the places was a meeting place on a Friday night for beers and a fire. Lots of asbestos, heaps of contamination, and like you've all seen, there was just no community ownership. Nobody wanted to take control of it, but they all thought it was certainly their right to have it there. So what we wanted was some control. We wanted a safe and secure facility that the community would take pride in. And we wanted a facility where we could separate some of the waste sources and try and recycle, if it was at all possible, as much as possible. So these are just some of the sites that we used to find. Gates would be shut occasionally, so people would just throw their rubbish straight over the top of the fence. The steel, and there's a steel sign there. Where is that? Just right there, scrap steel. But as you can see, there's not that much steel and plenty of other rubbish in there. You can see that at the top of the site there is where the trench is. The trench is overflowed. Well, it's not even really overflowed. People back their trailer up. They're not so good at that, so they wouldn't get it anywhere near the pit. So then they'd just scoop off what they had, and the next person would come along and they'd creep forward a little bit further and a little bit further, and then the next person just couldn't even be bothered to get anywhere near the trench. So they just dump it in the middle of the road. And this is just one end of the landfill trench where people decided they'd suddenly start dumping their chemical drums, and then it rained really heavily, and it's just disgraceful. So the light at the end of the tunnel, it came with the announcement of the Waste Less, Recycle More grants for us. Councillors and senior staff did a 6-monthly roadshow around all the villages, and that was the opportunity for them to start listening to the community. The community had always said they wanted better facilities, but we just had no money to do that. So this was really definitely the light at the end of the tunnel for us. We engaged Jason Stratford from Logicus Environmental Management. He came and just really low-key designs, really basic, nothing elaborate. And then the masterstroke for us was I ran a whole another session of community meetings, and I invited Mike Lewis. He was the EPA field officer from Armidale. And for me, it gave me an opportunity to say, I'm not the bad guy, this guy is. And thankfully for Mike, he was really good at that. And he was an excellent bad guy, and really helped us. So it deflected a lot of flack from council. It wasn't council trying to make these changes on people. It was actually the EPA saying to council that we needed to change, and thankfully he didn't mind that. So the ones we did 4. Dalman we completely closed, so you can see the before and after shots. there was a lot of community outrage over closing it permanently. The people that only lived sort of 5 minutes away didn't want to have to travel 10 minutes to the next one. But eventually they came around. Legume, again, this was probably my favourite of all the sites. I'll just show you the next slide. You can see, where are we? Whoa. This is the area of the old landfill dumping, and it's up behind all these trees, and before that section just right there was cleared. It was really dangerous. I used to actually be physically scared to go there because I never knew what we would find back up in this back area. Always was expecting to find a dead body or something. Bit of a redneck crowd up there. So what we did was we moved it to the front of the site here, and so it's perfectly visible from the roadway. We just put in all transfer bins, and the operator had full view of the road, so it made it so much nicer and safer. So there's the before and after shots. You can see that it's just gone from complete bedlam into something that's really nice and ordered. And it was something that eventually the community came on board with. They actually really appreciated the fact they had somewhere nice and clean and safe to go to. Another masterstroke was employing the right person to run these transfer stations too. We just struck a winner with the lady that we employed. She was able to talk to the community and educate them the whole time. So every interaction she had, she educated the community, which was really nice. Because the other thing to remember is that these people had never paid fees before either. So it was free and uncontrolled. Liston, again, very similar. Lots of contamination. People could never manage to get the waste in the trench. But you can see in this second photo that it's much nicer environment there. Each of these sites we just put a demountable building in so the operator had somewhere to sit and be safe. Urbanville, much the same. So you can see the landfill trench there, that's all floating on water. Even though we had a leachate pump and a leachate dam, it wasn't particularly successful, so that whole thing is just floating. But we moved the transfer station up to the top of the site and provided a much nicer area. So just in summary, integral to the success of the project were having the local EPA field officer on board, liaison with the community. Particularly need to highlight all the benefits from it. Asking the community for inputs. We actually ran a survey to see what days and times they wanted it open. They all wanted it 7 days a week, 24 hours a day, but we managed to cut that back. I think most of the sites we opened 2 or 3 half days a week and tried to cover the weekend in that. Having good basic plans, like just really basic plans. You really don't need to do anything elaborate with any of these landfills. Assessing each site for the most basic setup. Recruiting good operator, like I said before. We had a grand opening at each site where we invited councillors, the mayor, the general manager, and all the local community along, and we even shouted them biscuits. That was quite successful. And lastly, signs. Having signs. The more signs you can have, the better. I don't think you can have too many signs. That's just an example of one of the community sessions afterwards. You can see it's crowded. And just the way we separated it, like we've just got a large, I think it was a 15 cube skip bin for the recyclables, and then just 3 metre skip bins for the waste, which were picked up from Tenterfield and taken back to Tenterfield landfill. Lessons learned. The community consultation is vital. You need to educate your councillors. They're really daft sometimes. Is this recorded? Bells and whistles aren't necessary. Yeah, consider the ongoing operational costs. That's a massive ongoing commitment once you get a transfer station, because you have to obviously service it. And involve the EPA compliance officer as well. Just acknowledgements. I'd just like to acknowledge my director, Troy Anderson from Clarence Valley Council, for allowing me to come along. Tenterfield Shire Council General Manager Terry Dodds. Armidale EPA Field Officer Mike Lewis, who I know is not here, but if you could pass on that to him, that would be appreciated. Elissa, who was very helpful during the process. Jason Stratford from Logicus. Tenterfield Shire Council Technical Officer Melissa Bloom. Unfortunately, she's not here either. She would have been able to add a lot of post-opening information as well. And Northern Inland Regional Waste, who were very helpful as well. So thank you very much.